Graham Locke, thank you for joining us in another edition of What the Stewards Saw as we take a look at last Saturday night's meeting at Menangle. And there are a few upsets at the meeting, but we'll kick off with race one. And in this race, we had a couple of drivers questioned here, including Vince Langdon and Luke McCarthy.
Yes, Amanda, pleasure to be here. In respect to Mr. Langdon, in fairness to Mr. Langdon, he hasn't driven at Menangle consistently, having been overseas, and he didn't realise that the candy pole had changed to the 400 metres, and in consequence he shifted out, and prior to when he was able to, causing Medal of Honour to be inconvenienced and cover more ground. So he pleaded guilty to a charge of forcing another runner wider and was suspended for a period of 7 days. We did ask question Luke McCarthy, kept under wraps. This preparation in the recent starts has been driven quite positively, and Luke McCarthy just explained, as you'd imagine, with the speed shown by Eric Clapton and Lombo Kota Kinabalu, he felt that his best option was to try and find a trailing position in the running line, which he was able to achieve. The performance of Lombo Kota Kinabalu, I guess, it had won convincingly at its previous start with the benefit of an inside run, and mid-race one might have started to question the pace of the race, but it was quite dominant in running to the line.
Well, over to race two, and stewards questioned Kerry Ann Turner in this race for a use of the whip on Living It, Loving It.
Yeah, look, in the old terminology, it's probably excessive use of the whip. We've tried very strongly to discourage drivers to draw the whip at the 200 or 300 metre mark with the entrance to the straight, and then continue to use the whip consistently and repetitively to the finish. And we've got a number of drivers working with us in that regard, and Kerry Ann would be one of those. And unfortunately on Saturday night the stewards didn't consider that she'd broken up her use of the whip. She pleaded guilty to a charge of using the whip in an unapproved manner, and subsequently incurred a penalty of a 7-day suspension and a $400 fine. People should understand that penalty arrives on the back of having 2 previous offences of where there were monetary penalties issued, and there wasn't a period of 60 clear days or 60 drives between the offences, so we get to the 3rd level of penalty. We did remind Ms Turner that the next level of penalty is a suspension of 21 days, and that being the case within a period of 60 drives or 60 days, one would think that she'd be trying to avoid that.
Well, there was another suspension in race 3, this time with Todd McCarthy.
Yes, an incident here that was quite a serious incident in respect of Burra Sullivan, driven by his brother Luke. Luke had attempted to improve between runners, and particularly inside Steve Turnbull's drive, probably approaching the 100 metre mark, and had got to a position where there was adequate room to him as advanced, and then Mr Turnbull, his horse rolled in, and partly in the steward's view away from No Apache Me, driven by Mr Binskin on his outside, and that restricted the room and denied Mr Luke McCarthy the ability to push his horse forward. So Luke McCarthy was, I guess, pushing his luck to remain in that space, held up, and trying to achieve the best result for Burra Sullivan. And whilst he was in that position, there was movement then from Let's Cut Loose, driven by his brother Todd, and in the steward's view, the interference suffered to Luke McCarthy was at the feet of Mr Todd McCarthy, and as a consequence he was found guilty of a charge of causing interference and suspended for a period of 7 days. One should also say that following the race, the stewards deliberated amongst themselves prior to declaring the all clear. We didn't delay the all clear, but at least 2 of the panel members were satisfied there was a contribution from a number of runners in respect to Luke McCarthy's situation. On that basis, there wasn't sufficient grounds to to investigate an objection being lodged.
Okay, we'll head over to race 4, and there was another whip matter in this race, Graham.
Could I just say, in respect to race 3, we also questioned Chris Geary in respect of the tactics on Feel the Courage. The horse is a recent arrival in Mr McCall's barn from Queensland, and to our information had been driven positively in its races in show and gate speed, and in this event it was allowed to settle last. Chris Geary did inform us that he had no specific instructions from Mr McCall, his overseas, or his representatives. He did say that he wasn't specifically aware of the horse's form, but in considering the size of the field, he had no hesitation to dropping the horse back to the tail. So whilst on the face of it, it may have looked like a change of tactics offence, the circumstances of the race with the small field probably contributed to the decision. We did reprimand Mr Geary and advise him in similar circumstances in future he should discuss those matters with the panel.
Okay. Well, back to race 4. There's an adjourned inquiry from this race?
Yes. Look, we took offence to Mr Bull's use of the whip on the horse Banjo in the race, and we had other matters, as you can imagine, and alive, and by the time we got back to Mr Bull, unfortunately, he'd taken off to go back to his home base at Taree, or Foster, so that being the case, we'll catch up with Mr Bull at a future date. We did also ask Todd McCarthy his explanation in respect to Magic Oats. We felt it was more forward than we'd seen it in recent times, and he'd said that he was his intention just to come off the gate, and the way the race unfolded, he felt early on in the pace, probably going to the 1200 metres, that the lead was available to him, and on that basis he continued to roll forward to take an advantage position rather than sitting out in the breeze for the trip.
Okay, well, race 5 and race 6 as well, not much to report out of those races. Then we head over to race 7, which was the Group 3 free-for-all on the night, and Freiburg was examined by the vet. Yeah,
look, basically I think the race, there was a number of mid-race moves in the race, and the way the race panned out, although there's no sectionals, I would have thought the tempo on the race was probably on the moderate side. And if we look at Freiburg, he was actually put in the race by Todd McCarthy. He was the last horse to surge forward in the 3 wide line. We didn't take offence to that necessarily, but thought compared to his recent starts, the run was below what we'd expect from Freiburg. Mr Pizzuto, the trainer of Freiburg, had some criticism of the stewards, requiring Todd McCarthy to, or was required at an inquiry which was being conducted, and perhaps got on track marginally late. Nevertheless, in the context of the performance, we didn't think that was the sole explanation for the performance. We've had the horse examined and had the horse sampled. There were no apparent abnormalities in the vet's findings.
Okay, anything else out of that race?
No, not really. It was, I think the form pretty much held up. Montefieth was a horse that you'd anticipate being in that sort of finish. There was a couple of other runners in the race in Blazon and Cullen. We had a change of tactics to be more aggressive, and subsequently he was driven in that manner. The softest run in the race probably, or one of the softer runs in the race, probably won the race.
Okay.
As did Lots More Art, which ran another good race, having obtained an inside run now at its last 2 starts.
Okay, and how about race 8?
Look, the only thing to say here is that we thought an Eden Onyx for the run it had in the race was disappointing, and it tied, and we did stand it down pending a satisfactory trial. The horse has now had that trial on Tuesday at Menangle, and Mr Sanderson's also reported that following the race he's had pathology tests taken of a blood sample. That threw no light on his circumstances. He was very satisfied with the trial on Tuesday, and on that basis the horse will proceed to the races again. Ego Dan, for the benefit of punters, should understand that horse had difficulty obtaining clear running for a short distance at the top of the straight. That's about all in race 8, Amanda, and in race 9 we had a number of horses that made mistakes, and the race eventually won by our summer vacation for the rat race stable.
Okay, and towards the end of the night as well, we had a general matter regarding Mr. Grimson.
Yeah, there was a whip offence at a previous Newcastle meeting, and the stewards completed that incident on the night again. It was a matter of where it was Mr. Grimson's third offence within 60 days and 60 drives, so he was facing the third tier level of penalty, and the stewards weren't persuaded to move away from that those penalty guidelines, and consequently Mr. Grimson's now been suspended for a period of 7 days, in addition to being fined a sum of $400. So there are probably three or four recent instances, Amanda, of where drivers have reached that level of offence. And look, whilst we've been reasonably happy with the drivers' compliance to the whip rules since the 1st of May, we are surprised and concerned by the fact that we've now got 3 drivers who are having their third offence or reached the third level of penalties. And at the same time, there's another driver who's been put under notice to say that his recent use of the whip and the whip offences, he's now required to show cause as to why he retains an A licence. So, you know, we do monitor these things, and whilst we're happy with the number of overall offences that have been reduced considerably as per our e-Gazette item, at the same time there are a small number of people who, in our view, at this point in time aren't showing the right amount of commitment to the new rule and commitment to the industry in that respect, because obviously they'd be aware that the industry will remain under focus from a welfare perspective.